Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's your host Babyboy. Today we're going to be talking about something a bit more different. We're going to be talking about the DualSense controllers. I thought I would do this video because when the DualSense controllers were revealed, there was a lot of fanfare. Some people felt like Sony was copying the Xbox 360 and One controllers. Some people thought the DualSense would be a system seller on its own. And there was just a lot of fanfare surrounding its announcement. And so it's been nearly half a year since the consoles came out. The new gen consoles came out, the PS5 and the Xbox One, and we haven't heard that much about the DualSense controller. I know there was that tech demo with the Astro's Playroom, if I'm not mistaken, that came out, and that came and went. That felt like a tech demo that showed how cool these controllers were, but beyond that, we haven't really seen games implement the DualSense features. So first up, let us talk about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which is an upcoming third-person shooter platform game developed by Insomnia Games. You might know Insomniac for the Spider-Man series of games, the newer Spider-Man games, that is. You might know them for Infamous, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not mistaken. And they're also working on Ratchet and Clank, which is a PlayStation exclusive, a cult classic. And fortunately for PlayStation gamers, they do say they're going to implement a number of cool things on the DualSense. They say they love how the fidelity of the controller's haptics allow them to give the gamers so many things in the world a distinct feel, and the range of these features allows them to support things like explosions. You're gonna feel some type of feedback when there's explosions in game. You're gonna feel feedback down to the footsteps, so you see that range from something as small as a footstep to something as crazy as explosions. And they promise that the sensation is not going to get old, because that is something that I do worry about. Like, how does the first explosion feel? How does the 60th explosion feel? Will it still feel as cool after it's happened a ton of times, and will it not be irritating? I don't know, man. Insomnia Games says it's going to feel sensational throughout. Beyond the explosions and the footsteps, they do say firing weapons and striking different surfaces with the wrench were no-brainers for haptics, which means you're going to be feeling different sensations there as well. But beyond that, they also said they found ways, or at least more subtle ways, to implement the DualSense features. And these include the simple act of picking up bolts from a defeated enemy, which they describe as being that much more satisfying when you feel a tiny impulse from each one in your hands. They also talk about controller sound and subtle controller sounds complementing this action, and that sounds cool. And then lastly, they talk about how when you use the weapon wheel or you scan the map, you get to feel a faint click as you highlight these objects. So it does sound like they've done a lot more than the standard. You're going to feel some tension in the adaptive triggers and whatnot. It does feel like there's a lot more thought to this. I, for one, cannot wait to try this out when Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart comes out in sometime this year. I hope it comes out soon, and I hope it's going to be as amazing as they say. Okay, let's talk about a bit of a different game, Subnautica Below Zero. That's an open world survival action adventure which was developed by Unknown Worlds Entertainment. They've also done some interesting things with the DualSense, and we'll get to see them. I think Subnautica actually came out, so you get to see them right now. I say this because I do not have a PS5, so I'm not up to date with some of these releases. But anyway, Unknown Worlds said when they first held the DualSense controller in their hands, they knew they had to take advantage of its awesome features. That's what they say. What are some of the things you get to see if you play Subnautica Below Zero? The first and one of the coolest things I saw, it says you will feel like you're actually turning on the flashlight switch when you're underwater. You get to use a flashlight and you get to feel that click, or that actuation when you turn the flashlight on. They also say you get to feel the coil of the cable in your prawn suit as it launches from your grappling arm. That sounds like it will be a different sensation from the flashlight, of course. And then they also talk about the drilling sensation as you drill for resources with your drill arm, and that will add to the immersion, as they say. That sounds super cool in my opinion. Funnily enough, when they mentioned the drilling sensation, to me, one of the things I thought, and which might be a con, is how will all of this impact battery life. It'll be interesting to see when these games come out and when people have extended time with them. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how all of these sensations being replicated across your playtime, how they get to feel, or at least how they get to impact the battery life. Anyway, beyond the drilling sensation, when players in Subnautica Below Zero get to use the new metal detector tool and select a target resource, Unknown Worlds is using the rumble and the vibration to help players actually feel where their target is through the controller. So basically, your DualSense controller becomes a proxy, or at least a metal detector in game. That sounds cool. They say they'll have varying levels and speeds of vibration to indicate how close or far you are or from an object. Just, I guess, the same way a metal detector would work in the real world, where if you get closer, the vibration gets stronger. The further away you are from the target resource, the less powerful it will feel. That sounds pretty cool to me. And then lastly, they also talk about how instead of just using the haptics, they also use the RGB strip, the little light up panel on the controller. They're going to be using that to pulse faster as players get closer to their resource objective. So it's a pretty cool combination of features that they're using from the DualSense, and it's great to see that developers who are making games that are not exclusive to the PS5 are also going to be taking advantage of this feature. You love to see it. Next up, let's talk Ghostwire Tokyo. This is a game by Tango Gameworks. That's an upcoming adventure action first-person horror-like game. From the trailer, of course, it looks like a horror game. Tango Gameworks says the opportunities that the DualSense controller technology presents for Ghostwire Tokyo could not excite us more. They talked about the combination of haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, and built-in audio. So they're going to be using the speakers on the DualSense controller to bring out some in-game sounds. What sounds specifically? They say otherworldly voices will be emanating from the controller speakers, and these voices will allow you to use your quote-unquote sixth sense, perceiving things normal humans cannot. So I assume the audio that will be coming out of the controller will not be in the game world, but will be a sixth sense. That's what they say. Beyond the audio, they also talk about the DualSense's adaptive triggers bringing your character's powers to life by offering each their own distinct tangible feeling. So that means for each and every power you have within the game, it will feel different through the adaptive triggers. That sounds a bit complex, but to just dumb that down a bit and to make it make more sense, within Ghostwire Tokyo you will have control of elements. So that is wind, water, and fire. I think those are the three I saw in the trailer. So all of these will feel different in use. And they also say that attempting risky exorcisms at close range will be more intense, as the triggers help simulate the act of pulling a spectral enemy's core out with your own hands. So some of this stuff is hard to imagine without actually having the controller in your hand, but it sounds cool as hell. You have to give them that. Beyond the adaptive triggers, they also say the stronger your abilities in game become, the stronger the feedback from the controller will be. So for Ghostwire Tokyo, what interests me is this is the first game that we've looked at that uses the controller speaker. That was a thing on the PS4, but the implementation on the PS4 was never wow, to me at least. The speaker simply didn't sound good enough to do what the developers wanted, and most developers ended up ignoring it. So I do hope this sounds great. So let's talk about Life is Strange True Colors, an upcoming graphic adventure video game developed by Deck 9. This will be coming out in September later this year, and it's an interesting game. Your character has a psychic power of empathy. That's the description I read. And so because that's her power, she can read other players or other in-game characters' emotions. That's really one of her strongest suits. And so what they say is going to be happening is when you feel other players' emotions, their colors associated with these emotions, there's red for anger, purple for fear, deep blue for sadness, and gold for joy. So instead of only having these cues on the screen, these colors shining on the screen, you also get to see them on the DualSense's light bar, the RGB strip we talked about earlier on. That sounds cool, but it's not really a wow feature. But then beyond the RGB light bar, Deck 9 is also going to allow you to use the haptic triggers, or at least not the haptic triggers, but the adaptive triggers. So when you reach out with Alex's growing power using the left trigger, you will find the trigger feedback strength ramps up as the power builds up in intensity. So that sounds cool. It sounds like there's a lot of situational use, but in terms of all the games we cover on this list, I strongly feel that Life is Strange True Colors is the one that makes least effort to at least try to use the DualSense controller. But it is cool to see them make the effort, and sometimes maybe, like I said before when I talked about Ghostwire and Subnautica, maybe using these features sparingly would be better than spamming them throughout the experience. It might end up being the case. So hopefully when that comes out, PS5 players get to enjoy these features. Okay, so what's up next? Let's talk about Scarlet Nexus, an adventure JRPG. What's a JRPG? A Japanese role-playing game, if I'm not mistaken. I do think that's what it is. But this is going to be using the DualSense's features as well. So basically in the game, the players will get to wield psychokinetic abilities. What this means is you can lift and throw objects at enemies using your mind. So if you've played Control, that's basically the same power that Jesse Faden has in Control. How is this going to translate into the haptics and the adaptive triggers in the DualSense? Well, Bandai Namco says both the haptics and adaptive triggers will enhance the sensation of smashing pieces of the environment into enemies. When you lift and toss objects, you get to feel the flow of the hero's power, no matter if it's from left to right or front to back. So what I assume is going to be happening here is if you lift something on the left side of the screen and you toss it to the right, you're going to feel sort of like you're going to feel an effect across the controller. And they also say the adaptive triggers will provide players with a more realistic game experience. And how are they going to do this? You're going to be sensing weight and resistance whilst you pick up objects, just like you do when you pick up an object in real life. You carry the weight and you feel some sort of resistance. They're going to try to mimic that sensation using the controllers. So again, this is another studio that's using the DualSense sparingly, but hopefully that's going to be an amazing experience for gamers as well. I've seen footage of Scarlet Nexus. It looks very interesting. The videos I've seen also have the people who've played the game saying it is actually very interesting, the combat and whatnot. So hopefully this will be the cherry on the cake. Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2. That's a long name, but yeah, these guys, this game has been in existence already, but it got a PS5 update, and this PS5 update is going to be taking advantage of the DualSense controller to give a better experience for new gen players. I'm a bit jealous. I don't play the game, but just seeing them do that is pretty cool. But the first thing they mention is adaptive triggers. They say when using L2 or R2 for attack, pilots will notice a resistance to simulate the pulling of an actual trigger. So the example they give is the bazooka. They say the resistance will cause the trigger to catch at the input position just before the bullet is fired. And as you continue to pull the trigger, the bullet will fire and release the tension. I mean, the way they explain that sounds a bit more complex, but it sounds cool as well. They've also said they created a stronger rumble at the time of discharge, and then a longer trail, which means like a shake. So I assume this kind of really mimics the way you would shoot a rocket launcher or a bazooka, where you're gonna shoot it and you're gonna vibrate a bit and whatnot. Sounds cool, but I also worry about battery life, because if you're predominantly using that weapon, what does that mean for battery life? But hey, it's cool to see them do this. And beyond that, they've also said you have a unique sensation depending on the weapon you're using, whether you're using a machine gun or a beam rifle. And then more interestingly, they've said they've made a different sensation for melee attacks. And the way they describe it is crazy. They say, we've recreated the effect of your hands feeling tingly after you've hit something. I haven't hit something in a long time, but that sounds pretty cool to me. Let's talk about another action adventure game that's on this list, and one that I'm super hyped to see what it becomes. Kena Bridge of Spirits. So basically the story here is, I've been following this one beyond the DualSense. It says the story will be following Kena, a young spirit guide who uses her magical abilities to help deceased people move from the physical to the spirit world. And so I'm super hyped. It's a third-person game, and Amber Lab, the developers behind this, say the DualSense controller is allowing them to add a deeper level of immersion. You're going to be getting adaptive triggers and haptic feedback for Kena's bow, not her bro, her bow. So basically, when she draws her bow, players will be able to feel the resistance in the triggers, and this will be combined with certain haptic sensations. And so they say they really mimicked the sensation of drawing a bow. That sounds cool, but it does sound a bit cliche, because this was one of the things that was given as the primary example when people were talking about the DualSense before we actually knew what the controller was. The bow was given as an example 9 times out of 10, but it will be interesting to see what that means for the game. I guess it really could be one of those less is more type of situations. But anyway, I am hyped to see what this game will become, and hopefully the DualSense will be the icing on the cake, hopefully. So that is it for this video. Those are 7 games that are going to be making use of the DualSense controller. What do you think? Is that amazing? Is it a bit underwhelming compared to what you thought when the controllers were shown? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. That helps our cause massively. And yeah, I'll see you in our next video.